Hello, welcome to our webinar discussion series on the illicit tobacco trade. Today, we discuss the most recent illicit tobacco trade situation in Balkan region, and as it may have changed in due to the COVID-19 situation. And our aim will be to increase the understanding of the changes, if any, of course, that the coronavirus and the entire situation, healthcare crisis may have brought in the field of illicit tobacco trade in Balkan region. It is, of course, I think we can all agree, and that it's too early to draw any conclusions because, you know, policymakers had other focus, not following really the impact the illicit tobacco trade. However, we can discuss some of the recent seizures, so we can see whether there have been changes in modus operandi or the sizes and so on. With us today, we have Livija, Panić, as we had in other webinar series, and we have Ludo. Happy that you guys are back with us. And looking forward again to our fruitful discussion. So if we just start commenting on some of the recent seizures. So if you look at first example, Albania. So maybe I can ask you, Ludo, just a little bit to comment whether there were some interesting seizures or some latest developments when it comes to Albania.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as you said, Sandra, it's too early to draw conclusions. And what we have seen in the whole region is especially during 2020, a decrease in seizures. But obviously there was less transport. People were less on the street, so that was the first shock. But throughout 2020 and certainly again in 2021, you see that the number of seizures is increasing again. And let's be honest, that can also be caused by more law enforcement activity. Which law enforcement also may have had other priorities during 2020, the first COVID wave. But if we look here at Albania, we see that again these seizures in Albania, they fit a pattern which exists. Albania always had some interesting pivot, has been a pivot point in seizures. Like actually the whole region, of course, between all kind of different geographic areas. And the October 2020 seizure is yeah, well, it's the only interesting thing there, I believe, is that the origin was India, and we don't see India as an origin country very much. However, I don't know all aspects of this case, so it could also be that this could have been some kind of merry-go-round shipment, which we discussed in one of the previous webinars, that the cigarettes were sent to India first, and then as if the container arrived from India, so to kind of hide the origins. But and then we see the other seizure in 2021, which was a large one of about 10 million. Also, again, this is some. If you look at the route, this came in I believe from Montenegro. Yeah, again, these are known smuggling routes, so I don't see any changes in patterns here as if you compare it to pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So pretty much, as you can say, you know, we could maybe, when it comes to Albania and these cases that you mentioned, so maybe just to watch whether, you know, India is another origin country, or is maybe just as you said, you know, merry-go-round, just.
Yeah, and that's the of course we can't use real law enforcement information here. We have to rely on information which has been published. So our perspective is always a bit limited. But yeah, but so far, no big changes in patterns.
Okay, we need to watch, about this, what you
Yeah.
mentioned, but we'll see. And no conclusion can draw. Livia, what about Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina is not changing at all. The Bosnia and Herzegovina is still a very important region for this Balkan route and extending Balkan route that we were speaking about. And these two pictures are explaining the very same pattern, which is saying us that Montenegro is an origin, and the country which was the country of receiving was in these 2 or 3 situations. We have one more, 2 in Sarajevo and 1 in Banja Luka, was Croatia, and probably other countries in the Western Europe. In the first seizure, it was in February 2021. That was a large seizure. So we were speaking about 6 million of cigarettes, which is a really a huge seizure. After that was February 2021. After that, May, the same year, 2021, almost the same seizure of around 6 million cigarettes. The pattern was the same. So the Montenegrin track, which was found in Bosnia and Herzegovina and meant to go to the Croatia. And then we have a seizure in Banja Luka in March 2021, which was also the huge one, not as in Sarajevo, so around 3 million of cigarettes. And these 3 seizures was, I think, the surprise for the police and for the border too, because these are really huge and large shipments and the amount of illicit cigarettes. But what can we say about when we see these pictures? First of all, if we look the picture of March 2021 Banja Luka, we can see that this is not they are not using the empty containers or some empty spaces in the truck. So there are 2 ways, modus operandi, how they probably did it. Or counterfeiting the papers, or it was an agreement with somebody on the border that this truck or lorry, I'm not sure, goes from one country to another country. The same is on the other picture, and it's really a huge one. Also, these 3 large activities show us also that 2020 was probably a year when, because of COVID, everybody was cautious. But after that, in 2021, when we learned how to work and live with Corona, they simply tried to continue with their activities. And if they were having lost in economic loss, profit lose in 2020, they had to make it up in 2021. Also, these big activities show us probably 2 things. One could be, I'm not sure, Sandra, that's only my guess. So when the country, when the police, when the border is watching one border, one seizure, then it happens that in another border, something is going, so you deliberately leave something to be found, but on the other side, you are smuggling bigger and bigger containers, maybe. It could be. I cannot say it, but this is the modus operandi. So you'll deliberately give us something, because then the focus of the government will be on that. But behind that action, they're going another action, which is also very, very important. The second attempt was, for me as a prosecutor, very interesting. You know, you had in February 2021 large shipment. After that, just a few months ago, it was another large shipment, although the first one was stopped. So it was or a huge risk or a very, very, very good planned action, which didn't finish very well for smugglers. So the criminals are very clever, and they probably thought that the same pattern will not be again be provided by the police and by the borders. So they probably thought, okay, we will try the same. Probably they will not do the same control again, but it happened. Bosnia and Herzegovina has, they try to strengthen their borders, but the problem is that they have the taxes in Bosnia and Herzegovina are lower, in Croatia are higher. So we have a discrepancy of the taxes, and that gives an opportunity and the motive, very important motive, to do these illicit trades and to put in the Croatia a cheaper illicit whites, because this is this is for the Western Europe illicit whites.
No, that's interesting, all the points that you mentioned, because I mean, first thing what I was thinking, you know, when you talk about this is, I mean, it surprises me that Croatia is a country of destination, because usually it was in transit. Yeah? First that, so you know, and then modus operandi. I mean, you know, so transparent.
Yes,
in how they try to smuggle, and
I think,
you know, I
think,
yeah, please.
I'm sorry, Sandra. I think that these two seizures has to be or fraudulent papers, or a deal on the border.
Or it could be, as you mentioned also, you know, it could be some bigger things going on, you know. I mean, it's nothing unusual to say for the Balkan route that we have also quite some smuggling, well, I mean, not smuggling, but trade with drugs, you know, and stuff like that. So
yes,
could be some other aspects, maybe other organized crime activities that could be going on, and this was just maybe cover up. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? But you
it's
know,
interesting to see this transparent. That's
yes,
sure.
yes, and some kind of a hurry, because they didn't do anything, or smaller amounts were did in 2020, and now they have to make it up. And did it, as you said, very transparently. So it's it looks like almost naive, but this is everything, just not naive transport and naive activity.
Perhaps maybe to watch, and maybe just to compare whether there were so many other organized crime activities that were at the same time happening. So this could be an interesting angle to look at. Okay, good. Well, Livia, while you're still on, what about Bulgaria?
The Bulgaria, I love the position of the Bulgaria. It's a very interesting country. Bulgaria has a fantastic geographical position, and Bulgaria is the EU country. So on the one side, we have the Kapetan Andreevo border, which is a direct border with Turkey. And as an EU country, it has an access to the other EU countries without strict border controls. So the Bulgaria is very interesting to be watched in that position. Ludo was speaking about merry-go-round, and I think the Bulgaria is a good country, for example, for that. So lots of containers and goods are coming into Bulgaria and then going out and coming back and going out. So the we would say the documents are washed, and all those coming, entering, export, import activities from EU and non-EU countries are mainly in the EU countries as Bulgaria. What is also very interesting for Bulgaria is that in Bulgaria you have those called, forgive me, I have to just see, okay, cigarette guys. So these are the group of people, companies, which are usually working very legally. They import, export, but the problem is that inside of that very legal activity, there is very often a very illegal activity, producing or simply counterfeiting cigarettes, and distribute those cigarettes to the Turkey, which is a very big market for illicit tobacco, or to the Western Europe. Also, Bulgaria has a border with the Serbia, with the Turkey. If we look, give me just a second, Romania, of course. So geographically, fantastic country for this extended route, because it has a direct border with the Turkey. If we look to the graphs that we can see it in this picture, the first picture, it shows us also the very important picture. So Bulgaria, as an EU country, really strengthened their rules, strengthened the border. If we can see the numbers from 2010 to 2021, they are going down. If I understand it well, that shows us that Bulgaria has a awareness of this problem, and they are working as a government to solve this problem. And on the other picture, we have the cigarettes hidden in furniture. And of course, Kapitan Andreevo border police, September 2021. Of course, that this is a border of with the Turkey, and this is a very interesting way to smuggling cigarettes, and this is a classical smuggling, so not so transparent as we see it in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And they found a way, probably the papers were for the border, for the furniture. The furniture was probably going somewhere in the Bulgaria, or maybe in some other country. Maybe Bulgaria was simply the transit country. And they find a way. I have to admit, I didn't see this way of smuggling. I saw other ways, but in the furniture, I didn't see. But it's a very clever way to smuggle, because they used all the empty holes of the furniture to fill it with the cigarettes. So the situation is not so bad in Bulgaria. They are strengthening their borders. They are they raise the awareness, and they educate, and their all their agencies and police and border police, but it still has, but it's still a very important country for the transit country, and not just transit country, but the country in which the cigarettes are produced. Illicit cigarettes are produced thanks to those cigarette guys, how they call themselves.
So the conclusion that we can actually reach when it comes to Bulgaria is that, I mean, the COVID didn't really make any changes, significant changes.
No. No.
When it comes to modus operandi or the size of illicit trade.
Yes,
But
yes.
overall, we can see the improvements. I mean, if you look at this graph, as you
Yes.
mentioned, from 2010 to, and then 10 years later, if I may say so, it's improving. Still very important when it comes to illicit trade, but it's improving.
Yes, yes. Don't. So of course, here we were speaking. Oh, I'm sorry. I was speaking only about the Capetan Andreevo, but there are also two very important borders. One is the port, Varna, and the other is Latarevo with the North Macedonia, which is a road for handmade or tobacco, raw tobacco. So also very important borders for illicit trade tobacco.
But COVID really didn't impact. I mean, it's still, no. I mean, the only thing that I can see throughout all these examples that we look at, is that 2020 was, let's say, very challenging in all aspects, not just in health-wise, but also in this kind of trade. And then, once we felt more comfortable, I mean, in 2021, it was again going back to normal business.
Yes. We simply learned how to live with the COVID, and 2020 was a shock for all of us. And then in 2021, we learned how to deal with and to continue with the living, and the smugglers also continued with their activities.
Okay, good. Ludo, let me ask you, what's the situation in Croatia?
Well, I like Croatia in the sense that it gives us a first example of some changes in trends. Although I'm very careful to say that this is COVID related, but what we have seen there is you see some pictures from seizures by the police. What we have seen there is a group who has been importing and actually transiting large amounts of raw tobacco. I believe that they are. It's expected that they did more than 150 tons of raw tobacco between June 2020 and January 21. So in the middle of the COVID situation, actually. And they also had set up a company in Slovakia, so inside the EU territory, to help them with this smuggling. And that is one of the indicators that this is clearly meant. This raw tobacco is clearly meant for the EU market. And that fits in a broader trend, which, well, I'm not sure if we come to it later, and I know we already discussed it during one of the first, the other seminars, but we see in Western Europe that there is more and more illicit factories have been discovered. So there is a kind of change there, that from the final product, like the cigarettes, whether it's counterfeits or illicit whites, towards more production on closer to the end market. And I believe that these seizures in Croatia indicate or are part of that trend. But again, I'm not sure whether that is directly, we can directly pin that to COVID. That's the trouble here.
Yeah. It's too early to actually.
It's too early to tell, and there's some other examples in the region as well, where we see more and more seizures of raw tobacco, which are definitely mentioned of destined for transits, likely to Western Europe.
Okay, we should then watch whether there was some, you mentioned there were some changes in trend, but let's see, whether this is just related, to the current corona situation, or actually we are witness to another trend coming up. What about Kosovo?
Well, that's, and I was pointing to seizures in that region as well, that also show this trend of more and more raw tobacco being seized. These are two seizures from 2021, both raw tobacco. Those were also the more or less the largest seizures in that year. There is this report from the Global Initiative Against the Transnational Organized Crime from early 2020, which basically says that the domestic market for illicit tobacco in Kosovo is quite small. So we automatically know that seizures of this size, this must be transit, and yeah, the chances that these are also destined for Western Europe again fit in this larger trend which has been going on already for some time.
I mean,
COVID, I don't know. Yeah.
One thing, I mean, keeps popping in my mind. I mean, all these seizures, I see, you know, the large numbers. Does this mean that, you know, that the awareness and the actually not just the awareness, but the capacity of law enforcement and institutions there's, you know, dealing with the seizures of illicit tobacco, are they being better in this, or we're just now detecting small pieces? There's actually more of this happening, and even though it sounds big, you know, these seizures, you know, still maybe just you know, small of what's going on. Are they? Is it law enforcement? So straight question for your thoughts. Are we better at this in seizures, or is it just the small parts that we are finding, even though they're large?
That's the big question you have with any type of crime. What's the dark number? What does law enforcement see, and what is going on undetected? And I believe as law enforcement, and in general about activities of law enforcement, we have to be honest and probably say that we only detect a very small amount.
Yeah, because, you know, speaking to various people dealing with these issues, you know, kind of everyone was expecting, because, you know, all businesses are going online, and even this illegal business will be, you know, increase more in digital sphere. But looking at the extent of seizures, the sums, you know, it's
But
just.
Sandra, I agree with both of you, but I have to tell you something that is, as you said, pop on my mind, and I really think that the modus operandi is changing. You know, the not totally, but it starts to change, and it says to us that the enforcement is better working than it was in previous. In the situation when you have illicit fabrics for tobacco in the middle, in the heart of the EU, says us that they find better, economically better for them way to deal with the cigarettes. So it says us that what they measured their losses or their profits, and they are changing their modus operandi. For me, it shows us also that the capacity of the border, of the police, of the law enforcement rises up. So it cannot be stopped. The illicit trade of all kinds of goods, so for the tobacco, will continue. But something is changing. Definitely something is changing when you, in the heart of the EU, have illicit fabrics of tobacco.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. There has to be the economic interest for that. So, and there has to be a reason for that. And I really think that the one, not the only, but the one of the reason is that the enforcement is doing their job better than it was in previous times.
Yeah. I think I think I have to agree with that. Absolutely. It's much easier to smuggle raw tobacco than it is to smuggle the final product, because the volume is much larger. So apparently, yes, the law enforcement in the different regions, and I'm not sure, not only in Southeast Europe, but again everywhere, probably has done a good job. And so they had to change their modus operandi. going back to COVID, I'm not sure whether this is directly related to COVID. I don't think I can say this. If you look at the focus of Europol, they already started a few years ago to notice these more and more local productions in Western Europe.
I think the COVID just a little bit stopped, only a little bit stopped. That 2020 was maybe they were freezing for 1 year, but changing totally. I have to agree with Ludo. So it just stopped, not stopped totally, but only for that year, maybe.
So yeah, perhaps it's actually wrong to say that whether it's related or not. It's just, you know, maybe the best way to look at it is to see what was this, I mean, comparing situation, let's say post-COVID now, even though we're not fully out of it, but it's better, definitely, you know, in comparison to what it was before. And as we can see, pretty much modus is not changing, except that you mentioned the illicit fabrics. But it's changing the capacity. We're actually better at seizing. Yeah, I guess.
Yes.
I would like to think positively that it's not a small pieces that we detect, but that it's. Yeah. What about Montenegro? What's going on over there? Ludo, you know anything about?
Yeah.
Montenegro?
Well, what I know there have been some seizures in 2020 and 2021, some large ones, but not something that is different from what we have seen in Montenegro previously. There was a raid on illicit, on a cigarette factory, which already had been implicated that they were also involved in producing illicit cigarettes for years, but apparently they had some protection at a higher level for a long time. But eventually, now there was a raid. But some other seizures in Podgorica, which of cigarettes taken out of a free zone. I mean, these are all fit the pattern what we have seen in Montenegro over the past years. It has been much implicated in illicit tobacco trade, and that has not changed.
Okay. What about North Macedonia? Are there any changes there, or what's going on with North Macedonia? I mean, any of you can comment, but...
I don't know. Again, here I don't see any changes. I mean, there have been. North Macedonia is generally less known for illicit smuggling. If you look at the publications, media publications, you see that it's mostly law enforcement is mostly focused with very local raids on local markets and local illicit local cigarette factories. There has been some large seizures. I believe this one is of 12 million cigarettes. I'm not, yeah. But these were seized because there was some kind of idea of the intellectual property right infringing. So not directly that they were that it was counterfeit, that they were really smuggled. But I'm not really sure about this case. Maybe Livia knows a bit more.
For this case, I don't know more, but for North Macedonia is very important, and we cannot see it here because on the picture we have cigarettes, is raw tobacco. Macedonia is a producer of very legal, of course, producer of the raw tobacco, and people who are using it saying that this is a good quality of raw tobacco. And North Macedonia is connected with the borders with the Bulgaria, and it is also a very important region for smugglers or for merry-go-round, so Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, and then Western Europe, or as a transit through the Serbia directly to the EU. But I'm sorry that we don't have the informations about the raw tobacco, because I think that is something very characteristic for North Macedonia. If we can compare the legal production of raw tobacco, and if we can compare it, with the export-import numbers, so I think those numbers can tell us lots of illicit trade of these raw tobacco.
Don't you think that most of the raw tobacco in North Macedonia is more destined for the local markets?
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Okay.
is. I agree with you. And as in these countries, so when we speak about Serbia, when we speak about Montenegro, when we speak about the North Macedonia, this is a cultural habit of using cigarettes. When we socialize, we love to drink coffee, some alcohol, then smoking. And this is mainly for the local, but not just for local. We have to think regionally. So we have to think about those countries which are around North Macedonia. So probably not the country in which we can see the containers of raw tobacco to be transit, but regionally, locally, yes.
Yeah. So then the new way of thinking is that a region is a local.
Yes. Yes, and we will see it on the when we will speak about Romania.
Yeah. So while you already mentioned, what about Romania? Are there any?
Well, Romania is these two pictures are telling us giving us very important informations exactly about what you were just telling, that the local is regional and vice versa. Two types of smuggling here we can see. The first one, I will speak first of all about the contraband left by smugglers on foot on the Ukrainian border on September 2021. So the border with the Ukraine is a border in which the illicit trade of these cigarettes are coming. But the modus operandi is what is here interesting. As you can see in the picture, these are the boxes of 1,000, 2,000 cigarettes, and they smuggle it on their back. So they are crossing the border by foot, smuggling on their back, and they can cross the border a few times during the night, and they are using the pattern little and often. They have places where they put the cigarettes. So it's a very complicated organization, although it looks like, a little and often, but it's a very complicated operation, because you have to have some facilities where these boxes are packed. Then you have the group of people who are doing this. Then you have the trackers or those people who are cleaning the road in front of them, people who know where are the control points in the border. And then on the other side of the border, people who are taking these cigarettes and transport them further. So it is one very important way, and I think it's a very effective for smugglers, because if they lose a little. If they transport, they can transport a huge amount of cigarettes. The other picture is showing us a very modern way of transporting the cigarettes, and that remind me of something that is not the illegal trade of tobacco, but illegal trade of drugs. So in Mexican-American border, one of the modus operandi is to use drones. So they're not using here that, but they're using the plane. And this action was connected with the illicit trade tobacco between Romania and Moldova. So these two countries are very important route for smugglers. Romania is, and that is also very important, the border from Romania and Serbia, the same pattern. So smugglers by foot taking the cigarettes on their back, and they are smuggling these cigarettes into Serbia. Romania is also trying to raise the awareness of this problem. Romania is a country which has maybe the biggest number of the agency which are dealing with this problem from the aspect of the health, from the aspect of the economy, from the aspect of the border, but somehow the lots of this agency doesn't have the good interactive communication, and I think if they would strengthen the communication between those agencies, because everybody has the part of information. So maybe better communication between them could give more and better results. But the Romania is a very good example how the smugglers are dealing with new ways of smuggling. So this is not a truck, this is not a lorry, this is not a ship, this is not a container. These are very not so typical, especially when we speak about the plane, typical ways of smuggling all kinds of illicit goods. Of course, that now we speak about illicit tobacco.
So we haven't seen this, let's say, by plane before. I mean, I'm not saying it's related to Corona. It's just just trying to see the trend, before. Have you seen witness cases by plane before, or this is?
No. This is this was a little bit a surprise for me, to be honest. And I don't see, if we compare the numbers, any changing according to Corona when we speak about the illicit trade in Romania. So it is almost the same.
And what about Serbia? You mentioned before, that the same pattern is happening on the border between Romania and Serbia. So what's the situation in Serbia?
Yes, in Serbia, Serbia has a very, as I mentioned it before, but it has to be said when we speak about the illicit trade of all kinds of goods. Of course, that we speak about now about the illicit trade of tobacco. What we see on these pictures is a classical seizures on the borders. On the Serbian borders. Of course, that we have these seizures in the border on the north where I live and work. Serbia was always important for the transit because we are in the middle of the south. So when we speak about the Balkan, and we connect. We are connecting south with the north in any cases. Typical is a seizure by trucks, by lorries, by cars, by using empty spaces. That is typical for this, I would say, northern part. Then we have the border with the Romania, as I was explaining. So the smaller but small but often trespassing borders by foot, and they are taking the cigarettes on their back. And then we had a very interesting seizure on the Danube on September 2021, when the boat was used with the fuel, empty fuel tank in the boat, and that was something that is not quite so usual as we see every day. But the Danube is a very important river, and because it connects many countries in Europe, and it's a very good way for smugglers to use it. In the past, it was used to transport the fuel. Now it is the cigarettes and probably all kinds of other goods. But that was very interesting to see how they smuggled cigarettes in the boat. Also, Serbia has a very important, for us, for our economy, important free trade zones. This is very important for us, but this is also the place where we as a country has to be very cautious, because if we don't have a very good control of these free trade zones, this could be a red flag for illicit activities, maybe not producing, but maybe using the storages for storage the goods before they go in other country, or maybe the place to storage in the transit. So this is one of the could be a red flag. But the Serbia is somehow, which I'm very proud, is not anymore on the direct transit route. There we are trying, and we did a lot. Of course, there has to be more and more. So we changed our laws. We raised awareness. We educated the law enforcement, and it gives us a result. So somehow the route is, I'm not saying that we are not having it, but it is going somehow left or right, but around Serbia, although Serbia remains very important for smuggling cigarettes on the west, and from the west maybe to the Bulgaria, and then to Turkey, which is, we always somehow speak about, going up to the north, but there is also a way to a huge market in Turkey for the illicit cigarettes and raw tobacco. So it's also very important. What is not also good in Serbia, that the smoking is not banned in the public places, in the restaurants, in the bars. Unfortunately, smoking is a big problem, so the health problem. We have a trend that the women are now in the numbers of the women who are smoking is not going down but going up, which is also very interesting psychological or social problem. And again, as I said, for other countries, in Serbia, socializing always understand that coffee, some drinks, and of course the cigarettes, good music, and these 3 or 4s we never divide. So it's very important for us when we are having a good time, when we are relaxing. This is a cultural habit, and that is very hard to change. What is also good, that we changed our criminal law, criminal procedure law. We have the law of confiscation of criminal earnings and seizures. We have small discrepancies between procedural law and this law of confiscation, which we have to work on. But I think the situation in Serbia is better now than it was.
Yeah, good to hear this. I like this, you know, the thing that you mentioned when it comes to cultural habit, because, you know, we discussed this in one of our previous webinar series, you know, what would be a good measure, you know, to decrease not just the illicit rate, but overall smoking habit. And, you know, banning smoking inside, you know, was one of the measures. I looked at statistics actually for Slovenia, and I must tell you that there were no dramatic changes when it comes to the number of people smoking once we put a ban for smoking inside. But I think it's, as you mentioned quite often, I think it has to do more with the cultural habit. You know, I think if we change the culture, I mean, changing culture gradually, and, you know, you were mentioning before that, you know, it's normal that, you know, grandkids are around grandparents who smoke, you know. I think it's cultural thing more, you know, the way it's socialized. You know, in Slovenia, we socialize going to mountains, climbing, running, cycling, you know, it's not really the negative reinforcement, but positive. So changing the habits, I think this would be one of the key measures. So here, maybe just I can make a comment since I'm from Slovenia. I know when it comes to Slovenia, I mean, you know, here two examples. Actually, the media coverage is limited when it comes to seizure of illicit cigarettes and tobacco. In fact, only a couple of cases have been reported in the last year, and this stayed below 100,000 cigarettes. Here we see both examples actually from Maribor. One was in March 2021. Where there was actually fine cut tobacco was seized, you know, and it was actually one of the largest seizures of fine cut tobacco, and was around 1,000 kilo. And then a little bit more organized, let's say, organized crime in illicit tobacco was one that was again going through Maribor, and this was in cooperation with the Croatian colleagues, when there was actually 7 tons of illicit tobacco and cutting equipment that was seized, you know, and this was coming from Bosnia. I don't know whether Slovenia, I don't think Slovenia was the destination, but definitely there was this group had completely organized the entire processing and sale of this tobacco, and we believe that this is not just for Slovenia and Croatia, but also for other European Union countries. So, I mean, you see modus operandi in the first case, you know, it's pretty much similar as before and as everywhere else in the region. You know, boxes discovered in vans. So I definitely agree with you. We cannot relate or with any. I mean, we cannot strongly correlate to COVID, and looking also at the examples before and now, I think it's pretty much the same modus operandi, except for the things that you mentioned. And if you go now to the next one, you know, factories. This is something that keeps popping out. What about these factories? I mean, what's going on? What's going on? Is there a difference from before and now?
Well, I don't know whether there's a difference related to COVID, but we do see that, and Europol has been very active on this, as I said before. But we see these factories popping up in Belgium, the Netherlands, but also in Denmark, in the UK, in Germany. So throughout Western Europe, we see more illicit cigarette factories being discovered than there used to be. Interesting part though is that the people working in those factories are very often from the Western Balkan region. Mm-hmm. For example, this one, I think that the one in Belgium, they found mainly Bulgarians and Ukrainians working in those factories. I don't have the information on whether the organizers also come from the region or whether the organizers were more local here and they just hired people. So that I don't know. But this is a trend which has started a few years ago. And I believe that that only gets stronger. Again, is it directly related to COVID? I don't know. I think that the explanation that Livija gave that law enforcement may have become more effective in stopping the smuggling of the finalized products, of the actual cigarettes, counterfeit or white or illicit whites, whatever they may be. I think that could be an explanation as well.
I have to agree with Ludo. And I think that we in the future we will see more and more these factories and two modus operandi, or they will be totally illegal. And I think if I can see the pictures, probably this is the complete illegal factory, or we will see the plan B, which is in some very legal fabric. They will have some parts of the illegal parts of with the legal machines and making illegal cigarettes. It is hard for me to say that the smugglers are also the business people, but they are. On the end of the day, you know, when they put everything on the paper, they are trying to find the cost effectiveness of their work. They work and they do what they do because of the profit, because of the money. Of course, that they are on the first place criminals. But when they count this very complicated process of smuggling, they have to earn some money on the end. They have to consider lots of things in this process. So they have to think about production, facilities, people who are doing that, who are in that smuggling chain. And then the borders, then we would say washing documents, but to counterfeit the documents, then corruption, so where to pay, how much to pay. So all these activities cost. So they have to calculate it in their profit. And as I said, on the end of the day, when they switch the line, okay, they see, okay, plus, minus, where are we? And the factories are showing us, the factories in the EU showing us that they are changing a little bit their modus operandi. They probably count that they have more profit if they did it in the factory without all these supply chain, without all these people who are smuggling, facilities, drivers, trucks, vans, boats, planes. Okay, so it cost. They found a way to put these costs a little bit down so they can earn more. And the criminals, all kinds of criminals, are very adaptable. So they are always they always watch, and they are always somehow a step in front of us. They are always try to see what is changing and to adapt their activities to those changes, but always just only one thing is on their mind: how much will they earn from that activity, and what is the best way to do that activity to earn more money. So that's why I think that the smuggling business is changing a little bit, not totally, but a little bit, and that we are now seeing a new modus operandi for illegal trade tobacco, and that is avoid borders, avoid all those costs, and make it in the center of the Europe.
You're completely right. I mean, it's business, yeah. The difference is with the regular business that this one is illegal business, yeah. But you know, adapting activities to address the changes is as any normal regular business activities. And you know that one of theories of crime causation is actually, as long as we will have the benefits that outweigh the costs, you know, there will always be a crime going on, criminal activities. So it's perfectly expected and normal. Okay, thank you for these inputs, you know, especially when it comes to understanding the effects, well, trying to understand the effects of COVID-19. We have came to an end of this webinar discussion. So perhaps, you know, just some wrapping recommendations, comments from both of you, you know, way to go forward, whether we end on a positive or negative note, please.
Well, going back to the topic, what is the post-COVID situation? And if I look at the broader sense in Europe, what has COVID done in relation to these illicit activities? I'm not positive in the sense that I think most will go back to as it was. However, the changes that we see, the trends that we see, started already previously. Some trends may have been may go faster because of the COVID situation, but I think we most countries are living with it, have learned to live with it, and it will not have a lasting impact. That's my prediction on this specific type of illicit trade, not as COVID. So yeah, I don't think COVID has changed much and or will change much in this trade.
Okay, good. Livia.
I agree with Ludo. We saw through today's discussion that maybe 2020 was a year when the trade a little bit stopped, but just a little bit. And then in 2021, it continues. So I don't think that the COVID interrupt smugglers. So they will not change their activities with the COVID. What we also saw, if we would put the map before, not just COVID, but in the past and now, the red lines, if we would look the whole Europe, you know, so we have the red lines. So from where the cigarettes are going from the south to the west or from the east to the west. And then you can see where are the fragile points of those illegal activities and what to raise up as a capacity. When Europe raised up those capacities, as we said, on the border as a law enforcement, then the smugglers did something else. They're changing their activity and they are now doing something else. What I want to say, I want to be positive. I think that the lots of changes happened and will happen, but the smuggling is an activity which will, I'm afraid, will always remain. But we have to be modern and we have to act proactively and to be and we have to also change our modus operandi, how to fight with the illicit in this illicit trade tobacco.
Well, I guess as long as the benefits, when what we just talked about a couple of minutes ago, you know, as long as the benefits will outweigh the costs, it doesn't matter, you know, they will adapt the modus operandi and activities based on the change. So if we strengthen some capacities on the border, they will find another way. So if I may just draw the conclusion from our discussion, so we had temporary changes, if I can call them, you know, in 2020, because, you know, we kind of had stop in transit and everything due to COVID, but now we can say with the certainty that, you know, the seizures are back to pre-COVID volumes and also some trends. I mean, trends are pretty much the same. There were some new ways, as we saw in Romania with the plane, but the bottom line, we're pretty much the same as before COVID.
Yes, I agree with you.
Okay, that was a really a positive note. But maybe if you related to, there were much improved capacities, before post-COVID. So going back to, the situation as it was pre-COVID. So, I guess we're also being much better. Thank you, Livia, Ludo, again for joining us for this webinar discussion. And thank you to all listeners for watching this session. And we hope that you join us in one of our next discussions. Wish you all a good day.
Thank
you,
you.
Sandra.